Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 3, I don't know, Return to the Future, the Past. So when we left off, the President's husband, aka Seven's husband, and two very capable Starfleet officers beamed over to Picard's ship, that Rios' ship, La Sirena, and were taking them prisoner because it was clearly obvious they were helping aliens. And they're, of course, supposed to be from the Confederation. That's a very pro-human, human-first organization. They hate aliens. It was Eradication Day, and on Eradication Day, the President of the Confederation, Seven, and Picard, who is the greatest general in Confederation history, both decided to beam away from the whatever was going on, the great day, and left on a ship, and they took the Borg Queen and Elnor with them, clearly showing they were traitors. So it looked like they were captured at the end of last episode, but of course, Seven and Raffi managed to get the phasers away from the security officers, and within 5 seconds, they disintegrated Seven's husband and the two innocent security officers of the Confederation. Now, I say innocent because they were doing nothing wrong, but following their orders. But I guess, it's okay to kill Confederation members. Even last year, at the end of last season, where Seven had the realization where she said she was going to stop killing people just because they deserved to die. Well, it didn't last very long, and they're back to killing people, whether they deserve to die or not. And it's up to, I guess, Seven and Raffi to decide who gets to live and who gets to die. I suppose there's no stun settings on these weapons, which makes no sense, because surely there would be. Oh, and Q's here. Q shows up, but it's a different Q. This time, only Picard sees Q. No one else sees Q. Picard is only making himself known to Picard. Why would he work like that? He's never worked like that before in the past. Why is he only showing up to Picard's now? All he did was pop in to deliver one quick line, a completely forgettable line, and he won't be seen for the rest of the episode. I suspect he won't be seen for the rest of the season, except for one line here or there. This episode already reeks of being heavily edited, and I'll bring it up. I'll show you in a minute. But right now, they were attacked by Starfleet vessels or whatever, the Confederation vessels that look like Starfleet vessels. Of course, the Borg Queen managed to take control of the ship for a moment, and within a minute of taking control of the ship, she somehow upgraded the weapons on the La Sirena to Borg technology, because earlier they just fired a single photon torpedo. It was red. Now, once the Queen takes over, they fire torpedoes and they're Borg green. And a single torpedo takes out what appears to be entire ships. Starfleet starships. Now, the first attack of the first torpedo, they targeted the starboard nacelle, and we know the nacelle has always been a weak point in TNG. These two other torpedoes targeted the main deflectors. Now, I don't know if the entire ship blew up, but it certainly made it seem like it did. So the body count is already at 1,000, maybe thousands. 3 full starships, not to mention the 3 people executed right on the La Sirena. Anyway, the Borg Queen initiates the time warp jump where they're going around the star like they did in Star Trek IV. Frankly, Star Trek IV did it better. Elnor got hit. Elnor did in all the fighting going on. The only person to actually get wounded on the Picard team was Elnor. And I'll be honest, things don't look good for Elnor right now. Raffi's with Elnor trying to save his life, but for some reason, there's no medical equipment aboard the Confederation version of the La Sirena. They're all having their moment of going backwards in time right now. For some reason, Picard is grinning like an idiot. I don't know why he's smiling, but he's smiling. I thought they would do some nod to Star Trek IV or the whales or I don't know what. I've always wondered if time warp worked like, I don't know. How do I say this? If time warp, and there's no reason it has to, but if time warp worked like Einstein talks about relativity in time, and the faster you go, the faster you moving, the slower you move through time. I wondered if a ship goes to time warp around a star, if the ship is kind of always there. Like if you go from, say, the 22nd century back to the 20th century, is the ship like visible, even though it's moving at warp 9.9 something? Would it be visible around the sun? Like, I don't know if they looked out the window and they saw a Klingon bird of prey or something. I'm just saying I would have understood it. Maybe I'm crazy and that would have been stupid, but there wasn't any Klingon bird of prey. There was nothing. Whatever. Except for Picard grinning like a schoolboy. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So we got the intro. The intro ends. And directed by Leah Thompson. No idea who that is. Okay. So they come out the other side of the sun. Earth is the only planet visible. And somehow they get caught in Earth's gravity well. They're all awake, unlike in Star Trek IV, where they all had to be woken up off the floor of the ship. Picard asks, did we succeed? Jurati says, the chronometer shot. They have to look for context clues. She says, no radioactive fallout, small hole in the ozone layer. I guess they're pretty close to when they're supposed to be. Well, of course, there should be radioactive fallout in 2024. There's fallout now. Now, granted, not enough to destroy the planet, but there's been hundreds of nuclear bombs tested over the years. Fukushima, Chernobyl, God knows what else might happen in the next 2 years. There is detectable nuclear fallout in the atmosphere right now. Every living creature has higher levels of radiation because of the nuclear tests we've done over the generations. Okay, right this minute, we can tell if a creature, if a bone, if a tooth was created prior to the nuclear age or not by telling if it has these radioactive particles in them, even if it's at 1 part in a billion. Their scanners should be able to decide it. Okay, so here's the problem. My biggest problem with this episode. They're crashing towards Earth. Rios says they're going to crash. He can't decide where it's going to hit. He says it's going to be like a targeted crash more than a landing. So Jurati's like, we can't crash a spaceship into the middle of LA. So Picard says, give him the navigation controls, which Rios does. So he asks Picard, where are you taking us? And Picard says, home. So they seem to have crashed in the middle of the night into Chateau Picard. Excusing for a moment how they had a trajectory that was going to take them into Los Angeles, and that they somehow, Picard, within a minute or two, could change them over into crashing to France, the opposite side of the world. I don't know how they would have done that, but assuming that they had the power to do that, they've now crashed, and they don't have enough power for even the biobed to work. The biobed that's keeping Elnor alive. The Borg Queen is taking all the power. They've crashed right outside Chateau Picard. You could see it on the view screen. You could see it from the wide shot. They're maybe 100 yards from the house. They haven't woken up anybody. Nobody from the town is coming to check. A spaceship has crashed into a vineyard. Nobody comes check. Elnor is still alive, but he's gonna die. I guess they couldn't afford his high salary for the season. It worries me because Elnor was, other than Picard and Rios, the only other dude on the show. And I don't know. He was the funny man. He brought the humor. And if we're going to have a season without any type of humor, it's going to be a very dark season. And if this episode is anything like what's coming next, man, did they fail. I had high hopes after episode 1. I still had some hopes after episode 2, but this is the 3rd episode, and it is working very hard to ruin what goodwill I had to this show. So Elnor dies. Raffi is all upset. She's looking like it's her fault. It's not, but she already lost one son, more or less, and that he won't talk to her. I feel like she chose Elnor as the son she never had, and now he's dead. So the question is, if they fix time, will Elnor come back? And nobody knows. So Picard is telling everybody that they have to succeed, not just for Elnor, but for all of humanity. In the middle of him talking, Seven just gets up and says, you should have let Rios kill the queen. Earlier, they were trying to get the queen to stop sucking all the energy, the Borg queen, but she was catatonic. You couldn't talk to her. So Chris was going to just shoot her, and Picard stopped it. So here's a particularly stupid scene where Raffi is all upset, and Picard says, I know how you feel. And Raffi says, I promise you don't know how I feel, because what I'm feeling now is great disappointment in leadership. And Picard puts his head down in shame. Picard had a profuse disagreement in leadership all of the first season. from Starfleet ending the synthetics, to Starfleet giving up on the Romulans, to Starfleet telling him to get the F out, not listening to him. He had nothing but great disappointment in leadership. It was the entire first fucking season was Picard disappointment in leadership. And now you have the gall to tell him he doesn't understand what it's like to lose faith in your leadership? Where the fuck do you get off? But even more so, Picard doesn't point any of that out. He just sits there and feels more bad. And Raffi blames him for everything Q does. And he's still trying to explain to her that it's not my fault, it's Q's fault. Raffi says, fuck the Borg Queen. She's not going to care. She doesn't care what the Queen says. She's going to go find this watcher that's out there. Rios says it might not want to be found. Raffi says, I don't care. I'm coming for it. Picard says she's too emotional to go to do this alone. So Rios and Seven are going to go with her. Rios is going to bring his phaser. And Jurati says, you can't bring that phaser. If you lose that, you'll be breaking the timeline. But she lets him leave without the phaser, but she lets him take their communications badge. Jurati says, oh shit. Oh shit. Jurati says, no hospitals, no police, nothing like that. Any place you go that can scan you can find your vaccination chip and your other future technology. So in this future, you have vaccination chips. Presumably, that means in the Star Trek Picard timeline, you have vaccination chips. Well, that's not the Starfleet timeline. Because in TNG, there's been many NTOS, DS9, Voyager, many instances where they could have scanned for vaccination chips, but they didn't. Or other races could have found technology on these people to check if they were aliens or not, and they didn't find it. The one episode in particular I can think of from TNG where Riker goes undercover as an alien and gets injured and goes to an alien hospital that has a 20th, 21st level of technology, and they want to keep him. It was going to be a first contact mission, and they scanned him, and they realized his biology was different, but they didn't find any vaccination chip. Surely they would have. They had the technology to do so. Anyway, Jurati, Picard, and the Borg Queen stay on the ship. Now, Picard talks about the ship as if it's in Los Angeles, but they crashed at Chateau Picard. Now, what they did get right was, though they transported from France, where it was the middle of the night, it was bright and daytime in LA. So that's amazing that they got the time of day right. But they're literally arguing that the ship has not enough power to even beam people over. And Jurati says she was going to beam everybody over, but then Picard beamed everybody. Or they didn't beam over yet. But Jurati is the one who says that they're going to beam over. Picard is the one who does it. So they have so little power on the ship, they can only have a one-way transport. So Mark Ridge Industrial Tower is where they're going in 2024. It's the highest point in Los Angeles. they can run a complete scan of any alien technology in the city. Anyway, on the view screen, you just saw the Picard Chateau. They're looking for clothing that would, be close enough to 2024 clothing, which isn't hard considering this show is basically already made with a 2022 sense of style and clothing. Rios asks Seven if he still looks like a fascist bastard. She says, for fascist, no, bastard. Anyway, Seven finds a shirt. She pulls off a patch, a jacket. She pulls off the patch, throws it on the floor, and she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she's touching that the Borg, she's realizing she doesn't have the Borg implants, and that's going to come back to her. She's going to be surprised how differently people treat you when you're not part Borg. So Jurati, the one who said, don't take any advanced technology with you, hands out comm badges to Raffi, Seven, and Rios. Raffi doesn't want to talk about how it felt to watch Elnor die, as Seven also tells her she knows how she's feeling, because Seven watched Ichib die. Actually, Seven had to kill Ichib last season, but Raffi doesn't want to hear about that either. Jurati is talking Picard. She wants to partially assimilate with the Borg Queen. It's a whole lot of bullshit dialogue. But basically, Jurati is going to allow her mind to get connected to the Borg Queen's mind. So she can fix the Borg Queen, and then once the Borg Queen is repaired, Picard can yank her out. And Picard's like, that's too dangerous. What's going to happen? If things go wrong, how do I know you're okay? And she's like, you'll be talking to my subconscious. If anything goes bad, you'll be the first to know. And she apologizes in advance for how much she misses her grade school cat. So I guess that's why she programmed that cat back in the first episode. So Picard wishes them all good luck. Remember, you're here to fix the past, but don't interfere. Everything you do here has consequences. So Jurati says, I'll get you as close as I can to the tower. Well, why can't you just put him in the goddamn tower? Since when is the transporter so goddamn imprecise? So Jurati says goodbye, but it's Picard who does the transport. So Jurati and Picard get ready to hook up to the Borg, and he's hooking Agnes Jurati to the Borg, just a wire that once it touches her neck, she immediately shuts off. That's Dr. Jurati shuts off, not the Borg Queen. So, wow, I wish they sold that technology. So she just stopped talking, and Picard's got a pad that says all the relevant numbers. The Borg Queen, she's out of it. Neural network functionalities up to 1%. And they've got heart rates monitor and stuff. So now we get a song, California Dreaming. And we have a look at morning in Los Angeles. Bunch of stock shots, I'm sure. Kind of makes me feel like Lucifer. Jurati materializes between a Winnebago and a box truck. Nobody notices her. She just happened to be there. So she starts walking around, and 7 of 9, she materializes in a park right next to a little girl. The little girl says, "Are you a superhero?" And Seven bends down and says, "Can you keep my secret?" and winks at the little girl, and 7 just walks away like she knows where she's going. And Rios, he materializes 3 stories in the air and knocks his head on his fall to the ground. And he's left bloody and knocked out on the street. Why is it that Rios has to be the one that gets fucked up? But whatever. So some random dude brings Rios into a clinic. He says that Rios wouldn't let him take him to a hospital or call the police. He's saying no police, no hospital. So they're in this tiny clinic. And wouldn't you know it, his comm badge falls off. And this little boy holding a toy space shuttle picks it up. So we've got Raffi walking, and this is a sanctuary district. Wouldn't you know it? But no, it's not a sanctuary district anything like we saw in Deep Space Nine. It looks like any random homeless encampment here in 2022. The only reason we know it's a sanctuary district is because, oh, there's a sign that for like 1.2 seconds, it says sanctuary district. And 7 finds Raffi, and Raffi was just attacked by a guy. A gun to Raffi, wanted her money. Raffi's like, I don't have money. And then, of course, she beats the guy up, takes his gun, and robs the guy. And they just leave him. They leave him, and then you see the sign. Raffi then says, I don't see how a society could exist with so many contradictions and not collapse sooner than it did. Because of, oh my God, these beautiful buildings are right next to this homeless encampment. So it must be terrible. This must be a terrible society. Also, just to say, of course, the guy who robbed Raffi, or tried to rob Raffi, was a white guy, because those are the types of people that go running around homeless camps, always causing the most crime. Should have known. So Picard is talking to Jurati. Jurati is trying to explain what the Queen is doing inside her mind. Picard is saying at first the Queen is just an observer, but the Queen is looking at her emotions. And Jurati says she found anger. And says it's perfectly normal. And now Jurati is getting angry at Picard. And says, she goes off on Picard. Oh, it's a new room. Now she's at the door of sadness. She hates this door. It's dark. What if she never comes out? Picard's like, you will. This is a very annoying part of the episode. Going through Jurati's mind and feelings. We're probably fast forward through this. So after what felt like 5 minutes of garbage, Jurati and the Queen are merging. Picard is trying to pull the cord out of Jurati. Now the voices have switched between the Queen and Jurati. He doesn't know what hand is trying to stop him, and he pulls the cord out, separating Jurati from the Queen. So then we jump back to 7 and Raffi. They're at the tower. Of course, they walk right in the tower. No guards, no anything. Apparently, they take the elevator up to the top floor or near the top floor, and they're just walking around. Yeah, they're basically on the roof. Nobody stopped them. So Raffi says the higher we go, the higher they can amplify the signal. And only now a security guard comes out and says, hey, you're not allowed to be here. We're not open to the public. And so 7 says, oh, my girlfriend and I just got engaged, and, you know, that they had this security guard had let him up here on their first date. And 7 is saying, hey, you seem like someone with power and authority. You can't let this other guy be more fun than you. And he's like, Kevin? He's like, no, Kevin's not funnier than me, more fun than me. So he lets them go. He says, make it fast. Now 7 says, strangers don't usually like me, to Raffi. And that's because you're a beautiful blonde woman, 7. And just because you don't have the Borg thing over your eye, everybody sees it. Everybody would see it in the real world, in Voyager and Picard, but for reasons that only the writers know, they were never allowed to see it. So it turns out Rios is in a free clinic run by a very nice woman who basically treats the uninsured illegal aliens, and she won't tell Rios, you know, she won't report to the police. She won't even charge Rios for the service. So Rios has a concussion, and she uses the joke, she's no doctor, but Rios says, what? She says, no, it says it's a joke. It's a bad joke. She needs to fix his hand. It's dislocated. She gets the classical guitarist vibe from Rios, and she always is right about people. And she tries to help patients without gouging their wallets, and they help the no hospital, no police, no papers crowd. And he says, what's your name? Her name is Teresa. Cristobal. What's your happiest childhood memory? He says he sees where it's going. Concussion. She's like, humor me. Happiest memory. Has to be the mother worked at an academy that trained pilots. They had this amazing simulator. And he snuck out one time. He was 8 years old. He was having the time of his life. An alarm started going off. And it turned out he had the highest score than any cadet in history. And admirals and people came out with their jaws on the floor. And the mother was looking at him. And even though she was pretending to be mad, you can tell she was proud. And just in the middle of all that, the doctor pushes his fingers or his hand back into location. He screams in pain. She says, by the way, we're washing your weird clothes, so try not to bleed on the scrubs. And he realizes now his comm badge is missing. Yeah. He's like, oh, shit. What's he going to do? Who's going to find that? So 7 and Raffi are back on the roof. They find Rios's comm badge, but they haven't found any future stuff. Oh, so they're watching the fire burn on the mountains outside LA, and 7 says, soon the fire poisons the sky. Soon there'll be no rain. There'll be no food. This is the future that's coming for us. So there's a blip near MacArthur Park. And now there's another blip that's Rios's comm badge. So the comm badge is making noises. So 7 says, is that Morse code? No, it's not Morse code. It's the kid. He keeps hitting the comm badge. He's playing with it. He thinks it's a toy. Oh, Rios is there. Found the comm badge. It was very easy. The kid says, finders keepers. He's not going to give it back. And he's like, your parents teach you that stealing is bad? And he's like, my parents are dead. And the Rios is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And the kid laughs and said, gotcha. So now the kid is negotiating with Rios. He says, well, you got to give me something for it or else it's stealing. And you just said stealing is bad. The kid says, well, logically, you got to give me something. So Rios says, oh, logic, you're a Vulcan. And Rios finds a plate of cookies on the top of a refrigerator and just starts eating them. He's like, real, it's actually real good. They're peanut butter cookies, and they're real peanut butter. And Rios says, oh, do you want some? He says, I guess we could trade. Give me back my badge for the whole plate. Deal. And the mother, and who's also the doctor, comes by and says, oh, you just got played. He would have given that back anyway, and you were going to trade his cookies. So Rios says, he's your son. And she's like, oh, for classic guitar, you're a genius. And then she tells the son in Spanish, I assume, to finish his homework, or no Rick and Morty. So Rick and Morty officially part of Star Trek canon. Congratulations, guys. You did it. I've never watched an episode of Rick and Morty, but you made it. You made it into Star Trek Picard. Oh, they got his shirt out of the laundry. And she doesn't give him back the comm badge. She says she'll keep it up front, you know, to make sure Rios doesn't steal anything. Rios says that seems fair. So now we're back at the ship, which once again is clearly crashed in the nighttime at Chateau Picard. Nobody has come to inspect the ship yet. It's been at least, 30 minutes, an hour, maybe more. Nobody has come to look at this ship. The Borg Queen is awake and says, hello, Locutus. She had the strangest dream. You were there. The small companion, meaning Jurati. Jurati is knocked out. Anyway, the Borg Queen says they arrived before the divergence in the timeline, so it helps her vision. So Picard says, you told us there was somebody here that could help us, a watcher. And the Borg Queen says, now she's going to negotiate. She's like, if you want help, you're going to have to put something on the table. He's like, we lost somebody dear to us because of you. She's like, that's not negotiation. So Picard's like, what do you want? She wants legs. But from Picard right now, she wants the ship. Well, Picard could say, without the ship, how are we supposed to get back to the future to fix it? But he doesn't. There's only a few left at the clinic. Rios comes in and thanks for washing his clothes. He's looking for his badge. And the immigration police show up. Lock the doors, she yells. Immigration raid. She's telling everybody to run out the back. They're putting guy in a wheelchair. Rios takes the guy outside in a wheelchair, and she's like, I'll buy you guys as much time as I can. Now, for some reason, the immigration police are not smart enough to cover all the exits at once. They only go to the front door. So Picard is saying to the Borg Queen, he's not going to negotiate with her. She's like, so you're going to sacrifice your future, your own. Jurati wakes up. And Picard says, your plan worked. Power's been restored. He's like, however, the same leopard, same spots. And Jurati says no need to keep her activated. And she's like, idle human threat. You're deeply flawed species. I have information you need. You against all odds hope I relent. Therefore you won't deactivate me. Increasing the mathematical probability she gets the ship. And in the end, you'll sacrifice your lives for the future, for the many. And Jurati says, what is it that you hold? She knows the location of the watcher and when the temporal whatever happens. Temporal incursion. So Jurati says, are you sure about that? Now the queen is pissed. She's like, what did you do? She's like, where is it? Jurati stole the info. And Jurati says, computer, dictate the file, shit I stole from the Borg queen. So she's got the coordinates to find the watcher. She's like, I suppose even higher cybernetic life forms, you leave secrets lying around. And there's more. When it happens, she can almost taste it, almost feel it. It'll come to her, says Jurati. And the queen says, what you have done just here is more difficult and vastly more dangerous than you could ever imagine. What is that, says Jurati? You've impressed me, which means the queen is going to assimilate Jurati. I always figured she'd be assimilated. I think she'd be happier as a Borg. She's going to be the next Borg queen. So they leave the Borg queen just hanging around. So Rios realizes he doesn't have his comm badge, and the authorities broke the door. The guy who Rios was just pushing on the wheelchair has magically learned to walk. Praise Jesus. He's healed. He's walking out of the door. So he doesn't need Rios anymore. So Rios puts on a doctor's suit and comes out and says, hey, doc, I've got a bleeder here. I need your help. ASAP. The doctor says in Spanish, what you doing? He's like, I'm helping you. Rios says, I got a 13-year-old with a compound fracture. And the INS agent notices Rios has a bandage on his hand. He says, oh, that's awfully new. Looks like something you'd give a patient. Rios says, I'm sorry, are you my boss? And he gets arrested. So does the doctor. They're arrested for obstruction of justice. And the doctor says you're either very brave or very stupid to Rios. And the INS guy says very stupid. Anyway, the comm badge at the very end, it's Captain Picard. And he's saying, Rios, are you there? And that's the end of the episode. It was a short episode, 46 minutes, and that's including previously on. So maybe this was like a 42-minute episode when you consider the previously on and the opening credits, which is down quite a bit from the first two episodes. And I'll be honest, it felt quick. It felt slow in that I don't think anything really happened. Or what happened was simply they went back in time and they beamed to LA. Not a whole lot else happened. Compared to the first two episodes, this is a bad episode. They could have got a lot more done. They could have got a lot more in, but they didn't. I don't know. I wish they had more. I felt unfulfilled compared to the first two episodes. Like I felt those were natural stopping points. This one, I don't know if we needed 5 or 10 more minutes, but it just didn't feel like the right place to stop. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10, which is a marked drop from the first two episodes. Maybe it's an anomaly and things will get better. Maybe things will get worse. Maybe they'll stay the same. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Not too impressed with this episode. Really disappointed. Everything with the time travel was seen in leaked footage already. There was nothing, no surprises there. I'm confused as to why Q is only showing up to Picard himself and no one else notices Q is around. And I'm really not sure if they planned to crash in France and transport to LA, or if they really were supposed to have crashed in LA to begin with. But Picard's lines make him, he says here in LA during this episode, but they are clearly not in LA. They are clearly at Chateau Picard. Now, Chateau Picard shouldn't be abandoned, and even if it was, there should be somebody in the area who saw a ship crash, who saw, a light in the sky fall to Earth. Nobody is checked on that ship, and I suspect nobody will ever check on the ship for the entire time they're there. They didn't have to do that. They could have just left the ship in orbit, They could have left the ship in orbit and things would have been fine. I really don't know why they had to crash it, but I guess we'll find out for some reason. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review of Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 3. Really no member berries except for we had a sign that said Sanctuary District, and it in no way resembled the DS9 Sanctuary District. It absolutely resembled what LA looks like right now, where they just let homeless people pitch tents in parks and public areas. That does not a Sanctuary District make. Qapla all, bird out.